Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. New York City, a sunny but tense afternoon. The street was bustling, with people hurrying back and forth between yellow taxis and crowded cafes. Amid the commotion, Marcus Bennett, a man in his 50s, walked leisurely. Impeccably tailored, with a confident gaze, a dignified bearing, a respected judge of the state Supreme Court. No one would have guessed that behind this calm demeanor lurked one of the most influential figures in the judicial system. Suddenly, a policewoman stepped into his path. Lieutenant Emily Harper, young and ambitious, had had a rough day. Her eyes scanned the crowd with a severity that already intimidated passers-by. Marcus, deep in thought, didn't notice that he had crossed a no-parking line. "Sir, you must follow me," Emily ordered, her sharp voice echoing through the street. She grabbed his arm and jerked him back. Passers-by began to stop, watching the scene with a mixture of curiosity and embarrassment. Marcus remained calm. "I'm sorry, officer. I didn't mean to." "No discussion," Emily cut in, with a mocking smile. "You think your little ways will protect you? Here, everyone has to obey." She shoved Marcus against the hood of a car. The muffled laughter of innocent witnesses mingled with the honking of horns. Emily had no idea she'd just taken on the man who had presided over some of the state's most high-profile trials, nor that her career could be at stake because of a simple moment of arrogance. Marcus, however, showed no anger. He felt his blood boil, but his voice remained calm. "I think you should think about how you treat people." And in that simple glance, a spark of silent revenge was born. For what no one on that busy street knew was that Marcus Bennett had the power to change Emily Harper's life, forever. The next morning, Emily Harper arrived at the police station with renewed confidence. She barely remembered the man she had humiliated the day before. To her, he was just another citizen who had dared to defy authority. But Marcus Bennett hadn't forgotten. In court, Marcus presided over a delicate case, a financial scandal involving a multinational corporation. The room was packed, with journalists and lawyers eager to capture the slightest sign of weakness. But Marcus, always impeccable, displayed perfect control. His decisions were fair, implacable, and his calmness commanded respect. A few hours later, Emily was called to the Central Police Station for an administrative meeting. Upon entering, she was surprised to see Marcus sitting in the room, surrounded by officers and senior officials. Her heart skipped a beat. What was he doing there? "Lieutenant Harper," Marcus said in a quiet but firm voice, "I'd like to discuss what happened yesterday." Emily, red with shame and anger, stammered, I. "Save the excuses," Marcus cut in. "You publicly humiliated me, without knowing who I was. But I'm not here to punish you, at least, not yet." He stood up and approached her. His gaze was piercing, but not hateful. "You are young, ambitious, but you lack discernment. Authority is not synonymous with arrogance. And every action has its consequences." Emily felt a lump form in her throat. Fear settled in, not of a man, but of the magnitude of what she had just unleashed. She had just met a man whose power far exceeded that of his badge. "Consider this a lesson," Marcus concluded, before turning and leaving the room, leaving Emily alone with her discomfort and the beginnings of a doubt that would never leave her. That day, Emily understood that arrogance could be dangerous. And that sometimes, justice took unexpected forms, far from uniforms and orders. The next morning, Emily Harper arrived at the police station in a gloomy mood. She couldn't stop thinking about Marcus Bennett and his piercing gaze. The mere memory of his implacable calm made her feel a new discomfort, a dull fear she'd never known before. At her office, she began receiving anonymous emails complaining about his behavior. Some messages mentioned his arrogant attitude, others discussed minor professional misconduct she'd never noticed before. At first, she thought it was a coincidence, until she noticed that the complaints all seemed to come at times when Marcus was involved in some way in the legal proceedings. That day, an unexpected summons arrived. Emily was to attend a meeting with the chief commissioner. Her heart was pounding. She entered the office, and there, sitting at a conference table, was Marcus Bennett. "Lieutenant Harper," he said calmly, without a smile, "I see you are beginning to realize that your actions have consequences." Emily, shocked and confused, stammered, "But it wasn't." "It doesn't matter," Marcus interrupted. "You will soon learn that the public humiliation you inflicted on me will not go unpunished, but I am not seeking to destroy you. I simply want to impress upon you the value of respect and humility." As the following weeks passed, Emily began to feel the repercussions of her actions. Her decisions in the field were now scrutinized more harshly. The officers under her command seemed reluctant to obey her orders, her reports were criticized more frequently, and even her superiors made unusual remarks to her. All of this left Emily perplexed and frustrated. Marcus, for his part, always acted calmly and subtly. He never directly confronted her in public, but every interaction seemed to call her to order, every decision he made seemed to anticipate her mistakes. Emily realized that this judge she had humiliated had the power to control her reputation and her career, without even raising his voice. This chapter of her life marked the beginning of a silent struggle. Emily had just discovered that true power lay not in a uniform, but in wisdom, patience, and the ability to foresee the consequences of every action. As the weeks passed, Emily Harper began to feel an invisible weight on her shoulders. Every decision, every report, every interaction with her colleagues now seemed scrutinized and judged. Her superiors, often demanding but neutral before, now offered her pointed and insistent remarks. Even her subordinates, whom she used to lead unquestioningly, regarded her with a mixture of hesitation and defiance. Everything had changed since that confrontation with Marcus Bennett. And every day, she was certain that the judge was following her in one way or another, operating behind the veil of legal proceedings and his influential contacts. One morning, she received an unexpected call from the commissioner. "Lieutenant Harper, we have a delicate situation. You must attend the hearing of a key witness in the investigation into a financial scandal." As Emily entered the courtroom, her heart sank. There, sitting among the spectators, was Marcus. His gaze, calm and implacable, made her shiver inside. He said nothing, but his presence was enough to remind Emily that every action she took was now being watched by someone who could turn her life upside down. During the hearing, Emily did her best to maintain her authority, but she felt her hands tremble slightly and her voice lose some of its usual firmness. Marcus watched her closely, noting every hesitation, every misstep. After the hearing, he approached her, without trickery or threats. "Lieutenant Harper," he said in a soft but confident voice, "you are competent, I don't deny that. But you still lack discernment. True authority is not imposed through fear or arrogance. It is imposed through respect and self-control." Emily looked down, embarrassed and frustrated. She was used to being in charge, making quick decisions, and imposing her will. But facing Marcus, she realized her arrogance could bring her down faster than any mistake on the field. That day, Emily understood that Marcus's lesson would not be given lightly. And in a corner of her mind, she felt a mixture of curiosity and apprehension growing. How far would this judge take his life lessons? A few days later, Emily Harper received an unusual summons. She was to attend a press conference about a successful police operation. Everything seemed normal at first glance, but Emily could already sense a certain tension in the air. She didn't yet know that Marcus Bennett had prepared a subtle trap to teach her a lesson she would never forget. The room was packed with reporters, cameras, and colleagues. Emily stepped forward confidently, ready to impress the media. But just as she began to explain the details of the operation, a reporter asked an unexpected question. "Lieutenant Harper, some witnesses claim that you were involved in an incident with a highly influential citizen. Can you clarify the situation?" Emily, taken aback, felt her blood run cold. The entire room turned to her, waiting for her answer. And there, in a corner, sitting calmly, was Marcus Bennett staring at her. His gaze, calm but penetrating, made her understand that this moment was no mere coincidence. I, Emily stammered, but her words seemed to drift off into thin air. The reporters took note, some whispering among themselves. She felt the control she'd always had over situations slipping from her grasp. After the lecture, Marcus approached her in the lobby, still impassive. "You see, Emily," he said softly, "even your greatest achievements can be overshadowed by a single moment of arrogance. True authority is based on respect and humility, not intimidation." Emily, humiliated in front of her colleagues and the media, finally began to understand that Marcus was not acting out of personal revenge, but to teach her a lasting lesson. Every move on his part was calculated to show Emily that justice and respect always stood above the mere appearance of authority. That day, Emily felt for the first time the fear of losing not only her image, but also her control over her career. Marcus, calmly and subtly, had just shown that he held the real power, and that his arrogance could cost her dearly if she didn't change her behavior. Since the press conference, Emily Harper could no longer ignore the impact of her behavior. Every glance from her colleagues seemed to judge her, every email became a reminder of her past arrogance. Even the officers most loyal to her command now seemed to hesitate, weighing each of her orders before carrying them out. Marcus Bennett, on the other hand, wasn't doing anything out of the ordinary. He continued his legal activities as if nothing had happened. But wherever Emily went, there seemed to be a trace of him, a discreet reminder of the lesson she needed to learn. The newspapers were beginning to mention his incident with the judge, in minor ways, but enough to damage his reputation. One evening, while Emily was working late in her office, her superior came in with a file marked urgent. "Emily, we have received formal complaints about your behavior in the field over the past few months. The department has requested a full evaluation of your actions." The shock was brutal. Emily felt fear and shame wash over her. Everything she had built, her career, her authority, her confidence, now seemed threatened by a single moment of arrogance. And she knew, deep down, that Marcus Bennett was behind this chain of consequences, subtly orchestrating her downfall to teach her respect. The next day, she stood face to face with Marcus in a courtroom hallway. He looked at her calmly, with the same implacable calm she could never break through. "Are you ready to understand what true authority means, Lieutenant Harper?" he asked softly. Emily looked down, unable to respond. She felt the gravity of her actions and the lesson Marcus was teaching her. For the first time, she understood that her arrogance could not go unpunished. And that beyond the fear and humiliation, there was the possibility of redemption, if only she would learn to respect those she commanded and to show humility. That evening, Emily left for home with a mixture of guilt and deep reflection. Marcus, in his study, watched from a distance. His lesson wasn't over. It was just beginning. A week later, Emily Harper was summoned to oversee a special enforcement operation in a busy part of town. Local television cameras would be covering the event, and the entire department knew it was an opportunity to demonstrate competence and authority. Emily saw it as a chance to restore her reputation. But Marcus Bennett, ever present in the shadows, had other plans. He arranged to attend the operation, ostensibly as an impartial observer for a report on justice and public safety. His mere glance at Emily was enough to unsettle her. The operation began without apparent problems, but soon Marcus began to intervene in subtle ways. At a crucial moment, as Emily was giving orders, Marcus calmly corrected her in front of everyone. "Lieutenant Harper, perhaps it would be more efficient to proceed this way." The murmur of reporters rose. The officers hesitated, and Emily felt her control slipping. She tried to regain command, but every intervention from Marcus, always calm, highlighted her mistakes and poor judgment. At the end of the operation, Emily found herself in front of the cameras, feeling a sense of humiliation she had never known. Marcus stepped forward, but this time it wasn't just a look or a comment. "Lieutenant Harper," he said calmly, "I don't seek to humiliate you for the sake of it. I want you to understand that true authority lies not in forced control, but in respect and competence. You still have a chance to correct your behavior, but it will take courage to do so." Emily, flushed with shame but attentive, understood that this moment marked a turning point. For the first time, she felt not only the fear of losing her reputation, but also the weight of her own choices. Marcus, without raising his voice or making direct threats, had just taught her a lesson she would never forget. As she left the neighborhood under the gaze of reporters, Emily vowed never again to underestimate the power of respect and humility. And in the shadows, Marcus Bennett, master of her silent lesson, knew that the decisive moment was approaching. In the following weeks, Emily Harper felt a change within herself. Fear and humiliation had forced her to reflect deeply on her actions. She began to treat her subordinates with more respect, to listen to their suggestions, and to think before giving orders. For the first time, she understood that true leadership came not from imposing authority, but from inspiring trust. Marcus Bennett, ever attentive, observed her progress from a distance. But he knew Emily's transformation wasn't yet complete. To ensure her sincerity, he prepared a subtle test, a scenario in which she would have to choose between her ego and the good of her team. One morning, Emily was called upon to handle a complex situation in a tense neighborhood. A dispute between shopkeepers threatened to escalate, and the local press was covering the event. Emily had the opportunity to showcase her skills, but Marcus, sitting among the reporters, was watching closely. While giving instructions, an officer made a mistake, endangering part of the team. Emily's usual instinct would have been to reprimand him severely, but this time, she took a deep breath. "It's okay," she said calmly, addressing the officer. "We'll rectify this together." The team quickly got back on their feet, and the operation was completed successfully. Marcus then stepped forward, a slight smile on his lips. "Lieutenant Harper," he said softly, "you have shown today that you have understood the first lesson: respect and trust are essential. You do not seek to impress with fear, but with your actions." Emily felt a mixture of relief and pride. She knew she still had a long way to go, but this was the first time she felt truly respected by her peers and, paradoxically, by Marcus himself. That day, a new relationship began to form between them, one based on mutual respect rather than brute authority. But Marcus knew that the final test, the one that would force Emily to confront her personal and professional limits, had yet to arrive. A few months later, Emily Harper had solidified her reputation. She was more thoughtful, more respectful to her subordinates and even to the citizens she encountered. Yet Marcus Bennett knew that the final test of his ego and sincerity was approaching. One morning, Emily received an unusual call. She was to investigate a sensitive incident involving a prominent citizen and a public dispute. Upon arrival, she found Marcus present again, this time not as a discreet observer, but invited as legal counsel to ensure everything was handled properly. The incident was complex. A dispute between a shopkeeper and a citizen threatened to escalate, with the local press ready to film every move. Emily felt her adrenaline rising. This was exactly the type of situation where, previously, she would have sought to impose her authority brutally. But this time, she took a moment to observe the scene, assess the stakes, and listen to the testimony of those involved. She noticed that some officers were stressed, ready to react impulsively. Emily intervened calmly. "Listen, everyone, let's stay calm. I want everyone to express their point of view before making a decision. We'll resolve this together." Tensions rose as the influential citizen began to challenge every instruction. Emily felt the urge to give in to anger and ego, but she remembered Marcus's lessons. She took a deep breath and spoke calmly and authoritatively, but without arrogance. "I understand your frustration, but we must find a solution that respects everyone." Marcus, observing the scene, nodded in satisfaction. The press, witnessing his composure and poise, began to publish positive comments on his handling of the conflict. Emily realized, for the first time, that respect could be earned even in the most tense situations, and without humiliation or intimidation. At the end of the day, Marcus approached her, a slight smile on his lips. "Emily Harper, you have passed the final test. You have shown that your transformation is real. You now know that true leadership comes from self-control and respect for others." Emily felt an immense weight lifted from her shoulders. She had finally understood that true authority was not imposed by fear or arrogance, but by wisdom, patience, and the ability to inspire trust. That day marked the end of a period of intense learning and the beginning of a new chapter in her career and life, one in which she could wield her power with discernment and humility, and with deep respect for Marcus, the the one who had guided her through this transformation. A few weeks after the incident in the neighborhood, Emily Harper had become a role model within her department. Her colleagues were beginning to admire her composure, her ability to listen, and her ability to make fair decisions without imposing her authority through fear. Yet Marcus Bennett knew that the true confirmation of her transformation required one final test, a situation where her values would be publicly put to the test. An urgent matter arose. A conflict between two local factions threatened to escalate into violence. The national press had been invited to cover the incident, and the department's leadership placed its full trust in Emily to handle the situation. When Emily arrived on the scene, she faced a dilemma. One of the most aggressive officers, accustomed to imposing his authority by force, wanted to intervene brutally, risking a media scandal. All eyes turned to Emily. At that moment, Marcus Bennett arrived, officially as a legal observer, but his calm, scrutinizing gaze was much more than a mere presence. Emily felt a familiar pressure, but this time different. It was no longer fear, this was the moment to prove that she had truly changed. She took a deep breath and addressed her team. "We have two options: impose our authority by force and risk escalation, or listen, negotiate, and protect every citizen involved. I choose the second option. Who's with me?" A silence fell over the team, but gradually, the officers followed her lead. Emily coordinated the intervention calmly, giving clear but respectful instructions. She listened attentively to each side's demands, managing to defuse the situation without violence or humiliation. The press witnessed her mastery, and the comments were unanimous. Emily Harper had just demonstrated real and respected authority. Marcus, standing at a distance, smiled approvingly. He approached her at the end of the operation. "You have succeeded, Emily. Your transformation is no longer just apparent, it is real and lasting. You now know what true leadership is." Emily felt a deep pride, but also a sincere gratitude. She understood that Marcus had never humiliated her for the sake of it, but to show her an essential truth: respect, patience, and humility always overcome fear and arrogance. That day, Emily's career took a new turn. She was no longer simply an authoritarian officer, she had become an admired and respected leader, capable of guiding her team and making difficult decisions with wisdom and humanity. A few months later, Emily Harper had completely changed. Her colleagues respected her deeply, and even subordinates who once doubted her were now proud to work alongside her. Her department saw her as a model of thoughtful and fair leadership. Every action she took reflected the self-control and humility she had learned through her experiences. Marcus Bennett, for his part, continued his career as a judge with the same rigor and calm. But he sometimes watched Emily with satisfaction, knowing that her interventions had allowed someone talented but proud to become a true leader. One evening, in the quiet of a nearly empty courtroom, Marcus invited Emily to share a coffee. She accepted, intrigued by this unusual invitation. "Emily," he said softly, "you understand what I tried to teach you. But beyond career, I hope this lesson will guide you in all areas of your life." Emily smiled gratefully. "Marcus, I can never thank you enough. You didn't just teach me how to be a better officer, you taught me how to be a better person." They exchanged a look filled with mutual respect. It wasn't a bond of authority or dominance, but one forged by trust, understanding, and shared experience. In the days that followed, Emily continued to apply these principles to every aspect of her professional and personal life. Crisis situations, difficult confrontations, and daily challenges were now faced with calm, humility, and discernment. She had learned that true strength lay not in fear or humiliation, but in wisdom, respect, and patience. Marcus, for his part, knew his mission was accomplished. He had transformed not through coercion, but through subtle and patient teaching, and he was letting Emily continue on her path as a respected and inspiring leader. And so, what began as a public humiliation and a bruised ego turned into a lasting life lesson, leaving Emily Harper ready to face the future with wisdom, courage, and a deep respect for those around her.